Hello, good afternoon. I have the pleasure to chair this first panel. We have a slight change in the schedule. The first panel will start by a brief overview of the ISCTE-IUL project, part of which is this conference today, which is coordinated by Kinga Lebowska. She's an expert in international relations, holds a PhD from Warsaw University, and currently works for Eastern Studies, as you already know. So she will give us a brief overview of the ISCTE-IUL project as the first part of this discussion.
25 years of democratic change, 15 years in NATO, and 10 years in the EU. These anniversaries, these Polish anniversaries, incline us to reflect on the changes that have taken place in Poland in last quarter century. There seems to be no better place to observe these changes than the annual economic forum in Krynica in Poland that we have been organizing for the last 25 years. Representatives of world of politics, people of culture, business people, journalists and scholars meet there to discuss most current and up-to-date topics on Central and Eastern Europe. Among them, our friends from the Visegrad countries, from the Baltic states, but also from Ukraine and Russia and the Western Europe, meet there each year to discuss these important issues. And their observations are very inspiring, and their diagnoses are fresh and innovative. Therefore, we decided to invite some of them to contribute to this publication. Among them, some of our top guests that participated in Krynica and the Economic Forum. For example, Matthew Bryza, who is an American and currently based in Tallinn, director of International Center for Defense Studies. He wrote a very interesting article on the evolution of Polish foreign policy since '98, but he actually started with his personal remarks. As an American with a Polish origin, he came first to Poland in the 80s and 70s with his parents and had this holiday trip in this period. Then he came back as an employer of American embassy and was in Poland in the 90s during the transformation. Then he held a number of positions at the US government, and he wrote his observations and described his observations in this article, and wrote how Polish policy has changed and how it has evolved, and how it actually has happened that Poland today is an important player in the EU. Another article in this project devoted to Polish anniversaries is written by our good friend Ms. Magdalena Wasławiowa, who is currently a member of the Slovak Parliament, but she used to be a Slovak ambassador to Poland for many years, and is a great friend of Poland. She wrote an excellent book on Polish and Slovak relations with a very personal and friendly touch. She wrote an article about Polish-Slovak relations. We also have an article here written by Markus Meckel, who used to be a Minister of Foreign Affairs of Germany. And he writes about Polish-German friendship since '89. It's a very interesting article, how it has evolved and how it has changed. But we also invited Polish well-known publicists and journalists to write some articles, articles maybe not about foreign policy, maybe not about domestic transformation, but maybe something that is more appealing to young people. Perhaps some of you will find it interesting. Among these articles, I would like to recommend an article by Polish journalist Mr. Wojciech Staszewski, who is one of the initiators of the event Run Poland, and he writes about Polish rush to sport. Poles love sport. It's not that they always loved it. They started loving it like a couple of years ago. And now we are fascinated about marathons, about jogging. It's kind of a national way of spending time. It's amazing how Poland has implemented this new way. There is also an article by a journalist from Polish weekly Polityka, Mr. Edwin Bendyk, wrote about Polish success in programming and computers and the IT sector. It's also a very interesting article. So I recommend this pamphlet, this publication to you because it presents Poland from different angles. The project has been supported by the Polish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and by presenting it in many capitals, so far we had presentations in a couple European cities like Rome, Berlin, London, Tallinn, Bucharest and Budapest. And now we are here in Lisbon to share it, so please feel free to grab it and have a read. The aim is to underline the role of Poland in current European policy, but also to show how amazing country it is nowadays, what a dynamic country it is, and what a journey it has been for Poland for this last 25 years. And how it has improved, and what's the current situation in Poland. I hope you will find this pamphlet interesting and inspiring. I wish you an inspiring read, and I'm also looking forward to interesting discussion today. I need to tell you that when we've presented this pamphlet in various cities, the reaction of the audience, but also of the panelists, were very different. So, when we had this presentation in Berlin, there were a lot of questions from the audience about the current situation in Ukraine, about the role of Poland in this situation, and a lot of people, German people, asked questions comparing Poland and Ukraine a bit, and stating what similar countries were at the very beginning of 90s and how different they are nowadays. In Rome, when we had this presentation, Italians love to ask about Lech Wałęsa, love to ask about Solidarność, about Chopin and the whole Polish history. In Tallinn, we had a great panel where we had a lot of friends of Poland who know Poland very well, and they knew a lot of jokes about Polish people, but with a very friendly touch. So each presentation was different, but during each presentation, both the speakers and I would like to underline the role of Poland in democratic change that took place over 25 years ago. The democratic wave in Central and Eastern Europe actually began in Poland with Solidarność, its movement, and Lech Wałęsa in June '89, and those events were the inspiration for further events like the collapse of the Berlin Wall. I think Poland played a very important role in European policy, and I hope that this pamphlet will help you to understand what changes has happened and how it looks nowadays. Once again, thank you very much for coming and being here with us, and I'm looking forward to further discussion.
Maybe the audience has some questions for our speaker. So if you want to asking us something more about the project or something more about Poland or Polish international relations, feel free to raise your hand. I will come and collect some questions. Okay.
Perhaps later on.
Maybe later. Maybe you'll be less shy. Okay. As I already mentioned, there has been a slight change to the schedule. This second panel was supposed to have 3 speakers. We will have only 1 speaker in this panel, and 1 speaker will be moved to the second panel. So unfortunately, Miguel Makish, who was supposed to give a talk, had to go on urgent medical treatment and could not join us today, so he won't give a talk. And Luis Fraga, who will give his talk, but just after the coffee break. So now we will turn to the presentation of Eurico Brilliant Dias, who is a colleague of mine from ISCTE, from the Department of Management. He's an expert in internationalization and foreign direct investment. And you will tell us something about internationalization of business in Poland and Portugal, and I guess with a focus on the bilateral relation between these two countries. So, April, thank you. Have it.
Well, I guess there's something important.
Okay, but I have a presentation or my presentation, so probably it's going to be make my presentation over there. Okay. I suppose the microphone. Okay, the micro. Okay. I don't know if I need the micro. I'm a professor, so usually I speak so long. But, okay, with the micro. Well, thank you for the invitation. I'm quite grateful to, and it's an honor to be here with you. My main point was national business, why Poland, SMEs, and the speed of the internationalization process. I was member of the board of the Portuguese Trade and Investment Agency until 2012, or until the end of 2011, and my main interest is about SMEs and how can we increase the pace of the internationalization process. And when I was invited, my main question is national business, why Poland? Why a Portuguese SME can look to the Polish economy as a good or an interesting those economy. And later on, it was interesting because I'm publishing this quarter, in the end of this quarter, this year, a research paper based on cooperation between large enterprises and SMEs. And the large enterprise is Jerónimo Martins. Jerónimo Martins is a retailer, as you know, a distributor with wholesaling and retailing businesses. And Jerónimo Martins owns a quite important retail chain in Portugal, but also an important retail chain in Poland, here at Laginha. And Jerónimo Martins is a useful player in both markets because Jerónimo Martins can play a role of network enabler in order to transfer knowledge from both markets to different companies. If you are a provider of beer in Poland, you can, of course, look to some opportunities, and you can find some opportunities in Portugal, but at the same time, if you are a provider and supplier of Jerónimo Martins in Portugal, of course, you can also look and you can find, of course, some interesting opportunities in the Polish market. So my research paper is going to be published until the end of this year, and in my final considerations are going to be based on that research paper. Well, when I left the Portuguese Trade and Investment Agency, my main interest, or my main research interest, it was how were, in that time, Portuguese SMEs selecting new markets to invest or to export. They were mainly selecting near specific distance markets. For instance, they were selecting Brazil. A lot of them were selecting Brazil. A lot of them were selecting Angola, and some of them were selecting also Spain, another country. they were selecting France, Germany. So they were selecting mainly near markets, but near markets in different perspectives. Near geographical markets, like Spain, of course. They were selecting even France and Germany, near economic markets, because we are talking about markets of the European Union. The difference of GDP per capita is not so significant if we take into account all the markets that they can select. And of course, if we take a look, Poland would not be at first sight the first selection or first selection. As I said, as I've written in my first slide, Angola it was selected by more than 9,000 Portuguese SMEs. One in each two companies that are exporting right now is exporting to Angola and other markets, or only to Angola. The Spanish market Spain is our first client. More or less 25% of our goods are being exported to our neighbor market, Spain. And if we take a close look, Spain, Germany, and France, almost 50% of our goods exports are concentrated in these three markets. And of course, they are neighbors of the same currency area. Of course, we are talking about neighbors of the euro area. If we take a close look to this sample, my sample is 558 Portuguese SMEs. All those SMEs are SMEs that have presented or submitted projects to European Union funds in order to have incentives to export or to have incentives to have some promotion activities abroad, not only in these countries, but in order to promote those their products and their services. And if we take a careful look, for instance, between 2008 and 2011, Brazil was the country that was selected by more SMEs. In each three, one was selecting Brazil as the next market. And then France, Angola, Spain, Germany, Mozambique, United States, and so on, Morocco, our closer African market, was the 10th. Poland is not part of the top 10, was not part of the top 10, and we have three Portuguese-speaking countries, Brazil, Angola, Mozambique, then France, Spain, and Germany, United States, United Kingdom, Italy, of course, Italy, also an important market for Portuguese products. And Poland was my point, Poland was not even in the top 10. But we are too focused on the specific distance. We are too focused on language, colonial or ex-former colonial ties. We are too focused on these kind of issues, and more than that, nearness is felt not only by cultural issues, but also by economic and geographical issues. And in 2012, me and Katerina Marx, a colleague here of our department, we have tried to build a country distance index. And we have developed that country distance index, removing from the analysis cultural issues like language, colonial ties, administrative issues, some administrative issues, and we have developed this country distance basically based on economic issues, administrative but related with exports, social distance related with the use of some aspects like internet, mobile phones, and so on, and market dimension, market size. When we take a look to the results, Poland is in the top 10 when it's related with economic nearness, less economic distance with Portugal. Poland, and it's interesting, some others Eastern countries, like Slovenia, Slovak Republic, Croatia, or even Hungary. So they are not near if we look or if we focus on only about issues like language, colonial ties, or even, of course, geographical distance, because Spain is here, of course. But we have some similarities with these markets. So these markets can be quite interesting in order to invest and in order to invest, because there we can find some, as I said, some issues that can be more or less the same or similarities, as I said. Well, this is only economic distance index. If we have the country distance index with some selected countries, Poland was the 17th. Well, we have done this project taking into account World Bank data, and the World Bank data was gathered taking into account 214 countries. So 17 in 214 and 14. Okay, even before Poland EU membership, Carvajal and others have presented a paper, an important paper in 2004, where they defined clusters, markets clusters. And when they have defined market clusters, they take into account those variables like infrastructures, economic issues, standard of living, market size and dynamics, growth of GDP and growth of population. They have defined a cluster 6, and that cluster 6 with a huge number, a lot of different markets, but as you can see, without culture or geographical distance, Poland and Portugal together, they were in the same cluster. Carvajal in 2004 has considered Poland and Portugal and several other countries in the same cluster. So some nearness probably we have, and we can use that nearness in order to have more trade, in order to have more exports in the bilateral trade. Well, so the main question, yes, we could. It's our conference name. Yes, we could. But to do it, we need to overcome some issues, and as it was said by Emer and later on by Johansson and Balna, we need to overcome the liability of foreigners and the liability of outsidership. Because at first sight, Poland and other countries, but mainly focusing on Poland, Poland is not a first choice. It's not selected. Previously, if some Portuguese companies and mainly SMEs are making a systematic selection of markets in order to export or to invest. Well, liability of foreigners defined as factors that make it difficult to understand foreign environments. Of course, we have a liability of foreigners, we have barriers, we have some constraints to overcome, and like culture, language, religion, with Poland is not so important, but of course, it's our issue that we included this kind of liability of foreigners, and then the liability of foreigners, of the outsidership, because many Portuguese companies or Polish companies, when they are looking to the Portuguese markets, they don't find the partner, they don't find the way how to enter within the network. And to be part of the network is so important in order to explore opportunities. And as it was said by Johansson and Balna in the beginning of the century, but mainly in the late 90s, market opportunities, it's a subset of knowledge. And in order to acquire that knowledge, you need to be part of a network. If you are out, you cannot acquire that kind of knowledge, opportunities in order to explore and to make some trade, to sell in foreign countries. So we have, and it's really felt, a lack of institutional knowledge and a lack of market business knowledge and market opportunities as a subset of market knowledge. It was taking into account these two issues, lack of institutional knowledge and lack of market business knowledge, that me and Daniel Sakalov, a Master of Science student, he was Erasmus student in Warsaw during the last semester of 2013, and together with him we tried to explore how Biedronka can be a useful gateway in order to export more to Poland, but mainly SMEs, Portuguese SMEs exporting through this channel, using their relationship in the domestic markets in order to boost sales abroad, finding in this retail chain a partner of the local in those markets, local network. So, developing this research project, we have developed 5 different cases. One of them was Science for You, is well known in Portugal, Science for You. They are exporting toys, scientific toys, and a lot of their exports are mainly in Poland. They are exporting, but I suppose it's 30%, I remember, 30% of their exports are in the Polish market. Then Tinta do Lado is a company of Oporto wine, and it's an interesting case because they are not selling Oporto wine in Poland, they are selling other wine, because when they were discussing with Biedronka, they said, well, Oporto wine for us is not useful. If you develop a wine like this, for us it's better. So they have developed a product only to the Polish market, and they are selling wine in the Polish market. Then Control Vet is a service company. It's an interesting story because they had so many difficulties in order to find a partner over there in order to develop a local lab. And nowadays they have one lab in Poznan, I suppose. Yes, and it's quite interesting because they don't have a contract with Biedronka, but they use Biedronka as a knowledge basis. They have some doubts, they don't know how to do it, and they ask to their partners. They are partners in the domestic market, Portugal, and then Biedronka is more or less a knowledge partner. They don't have any kind of contract with Biedronka in the Polish market. Then, Valderrota is quite known because in Portugal they sell table grapes. You know table grapes? So they sell table grapes. It was a non-successful case because in the first year it was okay, but later on the Italians, they had a production that was cheaper and quality was not so different. So the first year was okay, the second year was not so okay. And right now they are not exporting to the Polish market. And later on, an SME, they produce and sell biscuits. They sell biscuits all over the world. They sell biscuits, for instance, in Japan, Portuguese biscuits in Japan. But they have selected the Polish market because, firstly, they have a Portuguese partner, Jerónimo Martins. And secondly, they are trying to find a good platform market, a market that can be a basis to all Eastern countries. And then they have a partner in Portugal, that partner is in Poland, so probably, it was their idea, probably Poland can be a good basis in order to export from Poland to other markets. They want to export to Poland, they want to test their then products over there, and then if everything is okay in Poland, they want to invest in a facility, in a manufacturing facility, in order to export from Poland abroad to other eastern countries. So it was quite interesting. I will not develop this part, the part why Poland, why did we select Poland as an example. But of course it was selected, it was chosen because we have a retail chain in Portugal, we have a retail chain in Poland, and with this connection we can develop which kind of features I need to have in this relationship in order to be successful in the other markets. So our final results were interesting. Well, market knowledge, experiential knowledge was quite important, and they have selected and they have made some transformations in some products. They have selected a part of their portfolio in order to export, and later on they have also made some adaptations in products in order to export. Price, mix, the product mix, and other issues were adapted to the Polish market, but the knowledge in order to adapt was gathered from Jeroen Martins and from Pia Jonker. And some of them, as I said, I mentioned before, for them was quite important this domestic relationship. So, to be a member of a domestic network with a local business in the both market was crucial to select Poland. They would not select Poland if they don't have a domestic partner that would be a knowledge partner in that market. Poland for them was probably the 10th or the 20th, to give you a figure, market. However, the domestic relationship was so important to explore this so important market. And of course, postal and local markets. What should we do? What lessons learned? We need to fill the gap, the lack of market knowledge between Portugal and Poland. Of course we need. But if we think that public entities are enough to fill that gap, I would not agree with this approach. Because we need public and private actors, public and private agents that with different kinds of knowledge, institutional and market knowledge, that is important to fill this gap. We need to involve public and private entities in order to fill this gap between Polish and Portuguese companies. Later on, LEs and SMEs, large enterprise and SMEs. Well, it's, what can I say? Since 2007 or 2008, this is my, can I say, my main topic is how can I use large enterprise in order to increase the pace of the SMEs internationalization process. LEs, large enterprise, they acquire a lot of knowledge. They have a lot of knowledge about international markets. If they share that knowledge, and a part of that knowledge is market opportunities, I can increase the pace of the internationalization process of several and different SMEs. And we have some countries with public enablers that make this effort, and with this effort they have good results. Thirdly, well, focus on market knowledge management, institutional and business. Well, many times we usually focus on tangible resources, money to invest. And we are trying to find the best partner and invest a lot in that process, how to find the best partner. However, we should focus on knowledge, on market knowledge, and we should try to find, even in the domestic market, who can be that company which is there in that market. That company in that market, Poland or other market, that company, they they have their own story, and their own story can be a quite useful material in order to be more efficient when I'm and effective when I'm approaching that market. Investment and trade in both directions. It's important. Yes, this is a quite important point because my focus was from Portugal to Poland. But Jerónimo Martins can be, and Biedronka, can be either a platform from Poland to Portugal. The bridge. In this bridge, we have two shores. And I'm exploring this shore, Portugal to Poland. But someone with me can research how can they be a good endeavor from Poland to Portugal. And so, okay, you haven't for sure understood my point. Filling opportunities. Yeah, we have a lot of opportunities, but we are not taking advantage of those opportunities because we have a missing link, and the missing link is institutional and market knowledge, and we need to fill that gap. Well, in 2012, it's my last point. In 2012, 1,818 Portuguese companies, mainly SMEs, they were exporting from Portugal to Poland. We have 9,000, as I said, more or less, 9,000 Portuguese companies exporting to Angola. And we have also to Spain more or less 4,000 SMEs, mainly SMEs that are exporting to Spain, for instance. So those companies, they have a lot of knowledge in the process of export. In order to fill the gap between Poland and Portugal, they only need one thing. They need to acquire knowledge about the market, because how to do it, how to export, how to adapt products, they know how to do it. So this is our task. Our public and private task is fill this gap with them in order to promote trade between Portugal, this case between Portugal and Poland. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your very interesting presentation. I would like to open the discussion by asking you a question. Although you said yourself that your focus is in the direction from Portugal to Poland, but while preparing for this presentation, I came across the data on the investment of Polish companies in Portugal, and it figure out that there is almost no investment of Polish companies in Portugal. And you were actually convincing us, and I believe that the countries are very near, and Portuguese companies enter Polish market through Martins, Eurocash, Laginha, we all know these. But do you believe why there is almost no trade in the other direction? I mean, the quotas are quite low, and there is no stable growth, almost no growth. So, basically my question: how Portugal could become more attractive for Polish investment?
We are talking about the last 10 years, and the last 10 years in Portugal, if we take a look to the GDP growth, our economy is increasing, it's not increasing so much that it's completely stable, or even in some years it's decreasing our real GDP. Portugal would not be at the side a very attractive market if we take a look to our sectors and to our markets, and we say, well, and we can conclude we have a lot of competitors. Those competitors are struggling in order to sustain or to maintain their market share. And if you want to come from outside and you want to be a local player, it's going to be tough to take a part of that market. So you really have to have a lot
take, when you look to Poland, Poland is growing faster and fastly. Even in 2009, when all the European Union economies were decreasing, I suppose Poland was the unique. It was the green island, yes. It was the unique economy that was growing in 2009, and when we look to the forecasts, well, Poland is going to grow in 2015 and 2016 a little bit less than 5% real GDP. Inflation is controlled. The oil price is going to be a quite interesting and gas as well, of course. It's not oil and gas, yes. Oil and gas prices and the decrease of the oil price is going to be an interesting contribution in order to stabilize inflation. And with the real GDP growing 5% each year, of course, it's a much more attractive economy than it is right now. The Portuguese economy. Later on, I will address an additional comment. Is of course Poland. We are talking about more or less 40 million inhabitants. I suppose it's 38.5 or something like that. But almost 40 million inhabitants. It's a huge market. It's one of the most important European Union members. I suppose dimension is more or less like Spain, a little bit less than Spain. The number of European members, the members of the Parliament is similar than Spain, the members in the European Parliament. And take a look to this figure. In 2012, the GDP per capita in Poland was 12,000 something euros. Forecast to 2060, I suppose, is more than 15,000 euros per capita, GDP per capita. Well, even if we take into account, if we consider inflation 2 or 3% each year, the growth is internal growth. The internal market growth is quite important. Of course, it's a private market. Not only because Poland and the Polish market, but also as it was, I mentioned that when I was talking with Pierre Castro, Portuguese ISCTE, as I said, they are exporting and they export biscuits, Portuguese biscuits. For them, Poland can be more than a market, it can be a platform market, but be careful, look to Hungary, Croatia, and other European Union members in the eastern markets. That's why if I was a Polish and if I have a lot of money, probably the development of my internal markets would be much more interesting than investment in the Portuguese economy.
I would like to make one remark about the phenomenon of Jeronimo Martins, as we call it in Poland. It's in a 38 million people country. It's a great success to become such a strong element in the economy. And during the economic forum in Krynica, where we had 3,000 guests, each guest has an ID card, and when they enter each conference hall, it's scanned. And after that, we can see the movement of our guests and what they visit. And do you know what was the most popular place during the economic forum in Krynica in 2014? It was Biedronka. Jeronimo Martins was actually one of our top commercial partners of the event that is called Central Eastern European Davos. So they were one of our top partners, and they built their own VIP Biedronka within our conference center. And it was the most popular place for all the politicians, business people, and journalists. And I think it's a good reflection of the phenomenon of Geronimo Martin's success in Poland.
Further questions from the audience? Microphone.
Hello, my name is Pedro and I'm a student of Modern and Contemporary History in ISCTE. My question is about a different subject, but it's about Poland too. Recently, the President Vladimir Putin said that he didn't saw nothing wrong between the pact between Germany and the Soviet Union. I'm talking about the pact between Hitler and Stalin. Of course, the President Putin had forgotten the massacre of Katyn Forest and other atrocities committed by the Soviets. But in my opinion, just in military terms, Poland functioned as a security area against a possible German attack. So I would like to know the opinion of Professor Yuri Diaz about this comment of President Putin. Putin said, I don't see nothing wrong in the pact between Hitler and the Soviet Union. I do know your opinion about this comment, if possible. Thanks.
Pedro, thank you for the question. I don't know if the question would be better if you take that question to the next panel. Because the next panel is about European Union and Russia. Yes. What would be different? Well, but I'm not an expert in that topic. For me, it's quite obvious that Poland is a quite important country because it's in between this relationship, this geographical area between Germany and Russia, and Poland and Ukraine, as you said, as you know, are playing in this right moment a quite difficult role because they are somewhere in the middle of those two countries. However, Poland is an important player of the European Union. Poland is member of the European Union since 2004. Is fully integrated in the European Union. The investment connections between Poland and other European Union countries is quite strong, not only with Germany. Germany, I suppose, Germany is not only the first provider, but also the first client of Poland. We have several different integrations in the value chain, in the global value chain. For instance, between Portugal and Poland, we have a lot of imports and exports from the same industries. We are exchanging products from the same industries, and the automotive industry is, of course, the most important. I suppose 60 or 65% of our imports from Poland are related with the automotive industry, parts and so on, automotive parts and tools and tooling products. So, in my opinion, Poland right now with the political and economic integration in the European Union, and I suppose they have built, it's my opinion, it's only opinion of Eurico, and it's an opinion of a professor of management. So I'm not a politician here in this right moment, but in my opinion, they have built a huge or an important barrier, a huge fence that can defend them from, how can I say, some temptations. But I suppose in the next time we will have a better answer with a more qualified people answering things. Okay.
Any other questions from the audience?
Good afternoon. My name is Bernardo Marçal, and I'm a student of Industrial and Logistics Management. And I would like to ask you, why do you think that the distribution channel created by Geronimo Martins is not more used by the small and medium enterprises in Portugal? At least the main reason why it's not used.
It's a good question, because I didn't say it, but Johnny Martins in Poland, they have a policy. They want to buy local. And they feel some needs from Portugal and from other countries. So the policy is, their policy is, I'm in Poland, I would buy Polish, and well, but as you know, for instance, Johnny Martins in Portugal is the fourth or the fifth biggest importer. The first one is Galp, because of course it's importing oil. So, Johnny Martins import a lot of products all over the world. Spain, France and Poland also. However, in order to be a supplier of Johnny Martins in Poland, you need to have some knowledge and some resources. The first one, you need to invest in order to adapt products. Secondly, you really have to have a differentiation. You need to fill some gap that they cannot fill in the Polish market. So they are, for instance, importing wine. They are importing scientific toys. But if you take a look to science for you products, they are quite different. You cannot find those toys in other markets. Science for you, they produce, probably the Portuguese people know better than the foreigner, they produce those toys that you can play with them, but at the same time you can learn something about science. So the products are quite different, but at the same time they can adapt to the Polish taste. For instance, wine. This company, the Eagle Volante, they have generated a new product because with the knowledge of Johnny Martins in Poland, the taste in order to adapt the product was quite important. If you know or not to adapt, it's an important resource of concern in order to be there. I suppose right now, Johnny Martins is importing from Portugal to Poland a little bit more than 10 million euros. We have a huge way to take in order to have more exports to this chain.
What's interesting in my opinion, I do not support this and the main research, but I believe that most of Poles consider Biedronka as a Polish company. They don't know it's a Portuguese company because the message is that we sell Polish local products. So most of Poles, they don't know it's actually Portuguese.
The large majority of the products
Oh.
are really Polish.
But it's, the wine thing is a horrible mystery. I just learned it and I like to drink a glass of wine and I buy it at Biedronka and I like to believe I drink Portuguese wine and now you tell me.
No, the wine is Portuguese, completely Portuguese, but they are adapting to the Polish taste.
So they do it very well.
Not that doing very well. You can drink a Portuguese wine with a Polish taste.
There's one more question from the back, and I guess we'll have to stop at one point, since we're a bit late.
Good afternoon, I'm General Hall, Institute of Social Sciences. We have good news for today because Johnny Martins announced an investment of 800 million euros in Poland today. So things must change in the near future. And I'd like to ask Eurico, why didn't you mention the bank that is owned by ISCTE Millennium?
Well, because my focus was mainly on SMEs,
Yeah.
and mainly on goods, the trade of goods and not services. As you know, the Millennium Bank in Poland, right now when the European Central Bank
has made the assessment to the European banks. When the assessment was made to the Portuguese bank, the Millennium BCP Portuguese bank in Portugal, it was considered that that asset in Poland was a quite important asset that would have several different elements that you can buy that bank. However, they can play an important role in order to build that bridge. They can build that bridge with more efficiency if they use some tools in order to promote exports from one side to another one, from Poland to Portugal, to Poland. Nevertheless, they are more supporting Portuguese companies that are investing there and developing their retail bank, the retail bank markets. And for me, it's more important. In my research, it was more important to capture how can a player transfer market knowledge, but not only market knowledge about how to do business in Poland, but in order to adapt tastes, I really need to have in the market, and I really need to know what is the taste. It's more sweet or not more sweet, and so on. That's why, for me, it was more important to select a retail chain or someone from industry in order to match both markets. But of course, Millennium BCP, they can play an important role because they have some instruments, some tools. Money is an important tool, but other can I say, risky management tools that they can give to both sides, to Polish companies and to Portuguese.
Excuse me, may I ask you, do you know the level of the relationship between the bank or the Millennium BCP and Geron? I think
It's quite important over there. Yeah, it is. They use, and it's important to develop over there activities. But I cannot say to you today if they have a quite close relation. But if Geron is in Poland, if they don't have Millennium BCP, for sure they will be there also developing their activities with other banks, with other local banks. I suppose cultural issues, and if I want to solve some problem in Portugal and in Poland, it's useful to have the same bank, but to be in the market in Poland for Geron it's not a matter of which kind of bank they are using. They produce efficiency in transactions, but it's not the key issue for them, for sure.
I guess since we're a little bit behind the schedule, I guess it's a good point to finish this first economic discussion about economics. After the coffee break, we'll have the discussion more focused on politics, which maybe the first speaker, Luis Fraga, might be helpful in answering the questions regarding politics. So please stay with us if you're good.